Imagine someone insults you, criticizes your work, or blatantly disrespects you in front of others. What's your first reaction? Anger? Frustration? Maybe even the urge to strike back? But what if I told you you could become untouchable? That no insult, no comment, no act of disrespect could shake you ever again? Sounds impossible, doesn't it? But the Stoics mastered this, and today I'm going to show you how you can too. Anger is one of the most destructive emotions. It clouds judgment, ruins relationships, and hands over your power to the very people trying to provoke you. But ancient Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus believed that true strength lies in mastering your emotions. This video will break down how to train your mind so you never get angry or disturbed, no matter what anyone does. Stay with me, and by the end, you'll have the tools to build an unshakable mind. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and like if you're new here. It helps me keep bringing you more valuable content. You get insulted, and you react as if someone just ripped the skin off your body in the middle of the street. That feeling of humiliation doesn't come from the words. It comes from the way you let those words sink deep, as if someone just confirmed you really are worthless. But what's the truth? The truth is, you nodded along to the one who insulted you. You were the one who stamped approval that they were right. They threw the stone, but you were the one who picked it up and smashed it into your own face. That pain, it doesn't come from sound. It comes from the false belief that you need someone else's respect to feel valuable. It comes from the illusion that others have the authority to define who you are, how much you're worth, and when they fail to meet that unspoken expectation, you fall apart. You get angry, you get hurt, you feel offended, but really, you're just disappointed in yourself because you've never truly defined who you are. You're still waiting for the world to hand you a title, give you validation, tell you you're good enough. In Stoicism, this is a form of mistaken power. You've handed over the authority to define yourself to someone else. Epictetus called it putting your soul in the hands of strangers. You react because you're still living in a psychological prison of your own making, a place where your worth rises and falls based on others' opinions. A place where a single sentence can drag you straight to hell. Not because it has real power, but because you haven't yet learned how to take that power back. This pain, if called by its true name, is dependence on external judgment, one of the greatest sources of human suffering. And the cruelest part? You know it, but you still can't stop. Every time someone insults you, you feel like a child abandoned, not because someone left, but because you're not strong enough to stand firm in the face of rejection. You wait for comfort, you wait to be vindicated, but no one's coming. And once again, you feel lost, like everything you believed about yourself has just been crushed. The wounded ego is a hungry beast. It devours every contemptuous glance, every cruel word, every online comment. And it grows, until you're no longer yourself. You're just a reaction, not a man with intent. That's why you must stare this pain down, not to endure it, but to name it properly. No one can insult you unless you accept their words as truth. The next time someone spits out something vicious, pause. Don't ask, why did they say that? Ask, why did I believe it? And in that moment, you'll see what really matters. Because when you stand firm in yourself, every insult is just wind. And that is the first step to what comes next, where you'll learn to separate what's in your hands from what you must forever let go. You want to know if you're strong or weak? You don't need to lift weights, you don't need to throw a punch. Just let someone insult you, that'll tell you everything. Because how you respond to an insult, that's the real test of strength, not your muscles, your will. You get angry, you boil over, you snap back. Because in that split second, your sense of self feels threatened, as if you don't react, you'll be trampled. But hold on, who's trampling whom here? They speak you believe, they poke you explode. They control your emotions with a single worthless sentence. So who's really holding the leash? It's not that they're strong, it's that you're weak. You're so weak that a complete stranger, someone who knows nothing about you, can touch the fragile thread of self-worth you've been pathetically clinging to as if it could hold up your entire life. You walk around like the world owes you respect, and every time you don't get it, you collapse like a building with no foundation. That's not insult. That's exposure. That's a spotlight on the fragile core you've been hiding under a mask of arrogance. In Stoicism, this is called the illusion of external control, the belief that people should treat you kindly, fairly, and understand you. But the truth is, they don't have to do any of that. You don't control other people's behavior. The only thing you ever control is your own response. And your response exposes you daily. It exposes the fact that you've never trained your will. You've never sat with yourself and asked, why does a single sentence keep me up all night? You've never learned how to stay silent without feeling small. You've never endured contempt and still kept calm in your own eyes. You react because you're afraid. You're afraid of being unseen. Afraid people will think you're weak. But here's what you don't get. That fear, that's the real source of your weakness. Strong men don't scream to protect their ego. They don't need to win every petty clash because they're fighting for a life that's far bigger than that. You explode at an insult not because it's outrageous, but because you have no inner footing. You depend on other people's perception to measure your worth. And that's the most dangerous way to live. Like a tree growing on the edge of a cliff, one gust of wind and you're ripped from the ground. If you feel offended, don't look outward. Look inward. Not to blame yourself, but to recognize the truth. You've never learned to master yourself. And if you haven't learned that, every step you take from career to relationships will be driven by emotional outbursts. You don't need the world to be fair to you. You need to train until you no longer need the world to pamper you at all. Have you ever stopped and asked, why did that person say something so harsh to me? Why did they choose those words, so cutting, so bitter, when I've done nothing to deserve it? The answer is, because they're in pain. And you, whether you meant to or not, reflected back a part of them they couldn't face. Sounds strange, doesn't it? But that's the truth. When someone spits contempt, mockery, or insult, they're not describing you. They're exposing themselves. Those words are fragments of their mind, distorted, bitter, broken. And in a moment of weakness, they threw those shards at you, hoping you'd bleed too. Because only if you hurt as well will they feel less alone in the hell they've built for themselves. This is what Stoicism calls the reflection of inner chaos. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone has done wrong, it's because they haven't yet learned what's right." That means they're lost. And a lost soul doesn't need your anger. What they need is for you to realize they're suffering far more than you think. They're striking at you because they have no idea how to save themselves. They don't insult you because you're weak. They do it because you're standing right in the place where they feel weakest. Maybe you're more successful. Maybe you live with purpose. Maybe you're simply different, and that difference makes them feel small. They attack not because you're hateful, but because your existence triggers a dissatisfaction they've buried deep for years. The truth is, you have nothing to prove. Because their words aren't a mirror reflecting you, they're shattered glass, reflecting their own wounds. The more you react, the more you validate their words. The angrier you get, the more satisfaction they feel. Not because they struck a nerve, but because you just fell into the mud they've been drowning in for years. They don't need you to explode, they just need you to sink, so they won't have to face their own isolation and failure alone. Once you understand this, something shifts inside you. You begin to see the truth. An insult isn't a dagger, it's a distorted cry for help. It's someone falling off a cliff, reaching out to grab whoever's close, even if it means dragging them down too. And you have to ask yourself, do I want to be pulled down? Or do I want to be the one who stands firm, not to look down on them, but to refuse to become a victim of a life that hasn't healed? Here's the brutal truth. You're not hurt by what they say. You're hurt by your need to be accepted. When you pause and see their pain for what it is, that's when you become free. Free from anger, free from the urge to strike back, free from the trap of letting others dictate your emotional state. You know what drives the offender crazy? Not when you clap back, not when you argue, but when you don't react at all. When you look at them like a cold breeze passing across your face. No hate, no pain, no resentment, just calm. Indifference so ruthless it suffocates. Because when someone wants to attack you, they don't want an apology. They don't want the truth. They want blood. They want to see you angry, trembling, screaming, losing control. They want to feel that they can hijack your emotions with just a few words. But when they can't, when they throw fire and you don't burn, they panic. Because their power vanishes instantly. This is what Stoicism calls response deprivation. You don't give the attacker what they crave most: control. Epictetus once said, "No one harms you without your consent." And silence isn't retreat. It's the most brutal, invisible punch, because it reveals the truth. They hold no power over you. Think of a child screaming because they didn't get candy, yelling, stomping, throwing things, all for attention. But when you don't react, don't budge, don't raise your voice, that child runs out of steam and goes quiet. Adults are the same. They just scream through words, gestures, more sophisticated tactics, but it's the same root. They crave emotional control over others to feel like they still matter. So when someone insults you, don't respond, not because you're being the bigger person, but because you see them for what they are: a storm in the distance, loud, maybe powerful, but never touching you. True strength is right there, not in crushing anyone, not in outshining them, not in puffing your chest, just in knowing you're not a puppet to anyone's strings. You don't need to express contempt. You don't need to act superior. Just walk away. Smile if you want. But never let your soul be shaken, because when you're indifferent to the insult, you're making a statement louder than any words. I don't live in your world. I don't play your game, and you have no role in my life. Your calm is their suffocation. Your indifference is the hardest slap without ever lifting a hand. That's not softness. That's discipline. That's the power to choose your reaction and the power to not react when that's exactly what they want. Because only the man who commands himself can master the world. And you can't reach that state without training. Daily. The next section goes straight to the heart of it: how to build iron will through small habits that seem insignificant but are the foundation of an unshakable mind. You don't wait for adversity to learn how to stand firm. Just like a warrior doesn't wait for battle to start practicing his sword. Willpower isn't granted, it's a muscle. And if you don't train it daily, you'll break. Not because life is too cruel, but because you are too soft. You get angry too easily, easily offended, lose control when challenged. No surprise. You live in a body that's never experienced discipline, a mind that's never been forced to sit with itself. You wake up when you feel like it, eat when you crave, scroll when you're bored, react impulsively when emotions flare, and then you wonder why a stupid comment from someone else ruins your peace. Stoicism calls this the starvation of the soul through indulgence. A man who doesn't train himself daily becomes a slave to emotion and doesn't even need anyone to chain him. He does it to himself with his own lack of discipline. Meditation, journaling, reflection, they sound small, but they forge steel in your will. Every time you sit and write down why you lost your temper, you peel your ego away from your reflexes. Every time you meditate for 5 minutes, you're choosing to face the discomfort you've always dodged with your phone, your work, your food, or your vices. And every time you say no to the easy thing, you become stronger for what's hard. No man is truly strong until he's faced himself in silence. No one reaches calm without failing hundreds of times to control their reactions. But the difference between those men and the rest, they never quit. They write, they reflect, they discipline. They don't wait for the world to soothe them. They learn to soothe themselves. If you're still easily rattled by a sentence, a glance, a tone, this isn't a societal problem. It's a discipline problem. You haven't trained your mind long enough to silence it when it matters. You haven't stared deep into your anger and asked, what am I really afraid of? You live by reflex, not by choice. And that's why you keep ending up a victim in someone else's game. Want to break that cycle? Start with the small things. Sit down, write, reflect, analyze. Own it. No excuses, no blame. Every time you hold yourself accountable, you're doing what the masses won't. Look yourself dead in the eye and refuse to look away. You won't see results overnight. But over time, you'll be stunned. The things that once set you off now barely register. Why? Because you've built a fortress inside one no one can topple. Not because it's tall, but because it's built from bricks of discipline, laid one by one every day. And once you have that, you don't need to avoid insult. You don't need to resist. You just stand there, unmoving, unshaken, because you've become yourself, no longer controlled by anyone. And at that point, you've touched the very core of Stoicism, stillness in the chaos. In the final part, I'll strip away every last illusion behind unshakable calm and challenge you to live it, not just quote it, every day, every word, every action. This isn't just a video. This is the reminder you needed today. Hit subscribe and like if you want someone in your corner pushing you to live by your real values. You spend your whole life trying to change things that were never yours to control. What others think of you, how they feel, how they treat you. You get frustrated, hurt, depressed because they don't act the way you expected. But have you ever stopped to ask, who gave them that power? Who told you to tie your self-worth to something you can't control? Epictetus was a slave, shackled, beaten, humiliated. Yet he said something that silenced the world. My body may be chained, but no one can imprison my mind. He understood something most people today have forgotten. Human life is divided into two kinds of matters, what we can control and what we cannot. If you don't live by that boundary, then you're not really living. You're being dragged along. What can you control? Your thinking, your reactions, your behavior. That's your domain. The rest, the weather, other people's words, betrayal, rejection, sudden misfortunes. All of that you can't touch, yet those are exactly the things you obsess over. You wake up worried about what people think. You go online and get hurt by some cruel comment. You get angry because someone didn't acknowledge you. But none of that is in your hands. The problem isn't how you're treated, it's that you bought into the illusion that you could control it. The wise don't try to change the wind, they adjust the sails. You can't silence others, but you can choose not to let their words into your mind. You can't make someone love you, but you can live in a way that doesn't need their love to feel whole. Once you grasp that distinction, you no longer see yourself as life's victim. You're the one at the wheel. And it starts with one simple choice. Only invest energy in what you truly control. You're still trying to change them, aren't you? Still thinking if you say one more thing, explain one more time, are kind just a little longer, they'll understand, they'll change, they'll be fairer. But they don't. And you know that, yet you keep trying. That's the real pain, not because they're terrible, but because you cling to the illusion that you can make them better. You think you can fix someone. You think if you're kind enough, patient enough, loving enough, they'll change. But then you realize you can't. You can't control how they think, how they feel, how they behave. You can't crawl into their head and rewire their logic. You can't pull them out of their pain if they don't want to leave it. And the more you try, the more powerless, invisible, worthless you feel. Not because they did that to you, but because you kept ramming your head against a wall you were never meant to break through. In Stoicism, this is the illusion of power over others, one of the most insidious forms of self-torture. Believing it's your responsibility to make someone else change. Epictetus once warned, if you aim to control what is not yours, you'll lose what is. Every time you try to change someone, you abandon your control over yourself. You turn your emotions into a hostage held in their hands, and when they don't act the way you hoped, you collapse. The more entangled you are in them, the further you drift from yourself. You spend your energy tracking them, guessing their thoughts, adjusting your behavior to please them. But not once do you stop to ask, is this within my control? The answer is no, it never was. And here's the painful truth. They may never apologize, never change, never understand how much you tried. But that's not a tragedy, that's reality. And only when you accept that reality do you truly begin to live. If not, you'll stay trapped in the same loop. Giving, hoping, disappointment, anger, emptiness. Then repeat. And you call that trying for someone else. But in truth, it's just foolish resistance to reality. Next, I'll speak plainly about the only thing you actually own and the very thing you let others steal from you every single day. Your reaction. If you don't reclaim that control, don't ask why your life keeps repeating the same pain. You can lose everything. Your job, your money, your reputation, your loved ones, and still survive. But the moment you lose control over your own reactions, no one needs to destroy you. You'll do it yourself, bit by bit, quietly and completely. Your reaction is the only weapon you truly own. And the painful truth is, you throw it away every day without even noticing. Every time you explode over a comment, every time you slam your hand on the table, storm out, or scream in someone's face just because they didn't do what you wanted, you're handing over your emotional control. You're living like a giant exposed button anyone can push. And then you make excuses. I didn't mean to. They started it. I'm only human. Sounds reasonable. But what's the truth? You chose to react. No one held a gun to your head and said, go crazy now. You did it because you haven't yet learned to sit still through your own inner storms. You're so used to reacting instantly that you've forgotten you can choose your response. In Stoicism, this is the ultimate power. The power to choose your reaction. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. You can stand in the storm and remain calm. You can be insulted and not retaliate. You can see injustice and not become a slave to rage. It all begins with one decision. I will not let anyone else dictate my mental state. Look this truth in the face. You don't have to react out of habit. You don't have to answer instantly. You can stop, breathe, observe, and then choose. Not reacting is still a reaction, and often it's the most powerful one. A man who hasn't mastered his reactions will forever live as a puppet to society, a puppet to circumstances, a puppet to other people, and then he complains that his life is a mess. But how can it be otherwise when you let your mind be shredded daily by things beyond your control? Want to change your life? Don't start by trying to control others. Start by mastering yourself when they don't meet your expectations. Because if you can't do that, all your self-development is just performance. The next part will go even deeper into the real cost of constantly draining your energy on what you can't control. What Stoicism calls poisoning your own soul with useless resistance. No one is destroying you. You're doing it to yourself, bit by bit, by mentally chewing on everything you can't change. Every time you replay an argument, relive an insult, revisit a look of contempt, you're drinking poison hoping someone else dies. And you drink it daily. You think anger is a sign of strength? No. It's a sign that you've let something outside your control seep into your bloodstream. When someone insults you, they throw a rock, but you carry that rock home, sharpen it with every memory, and stab yourself over and over. First, you're angry, then you're drained, then you go numb. You stop trusting, stop connecting, stop feeling anything real because you're afraid of being hurt again. Not by them, but because you've soaked too long in emotional toxicity and refused to get out. Stoicism calls this resistance to what cannot be changed, and the consequences aren't just negative emotions, it's the erosion of your will. Chronic fatigue, that deep exhaustion you can't explain. You think your job is burning you out? No, you're wasting your mental energy reenacting battles you have no power to win. You scroll through old messages. You think about what you should have said. You imagine revenge scenarios. You mentally draft clapbacks you never send. Seems harmless, but every time you're putting yourself right back into someone else's control. And you call that processing emotions? No. That's burning your life force on something dead, immutable, and worthless. The Stoic doesn't do that. He faces the truth. That happened. I don't control it, so I let it go. Not because it makes him look noble, but because holding on is stupid. It's slow suicide. You think you're trying to live positively, but inside, you're rotting. Because you refuse to cut away the dead parts of your memory. You don't lack willpower. You're just spending it on battles that cannot be won. Not because you're weak, but because you don't know how to stop. And if you don't know what to let go and what to hold on to, you'll never have the strength to change your life. The next section will show you the pivot point. Instead of getting pulled into what you can't change, learn to pour all your energy into what you can control every day, every reaction, every decision. Because that's where your life truly starts to shift. Are you tired? It's not because you're doing too much, it's because you're pushing in the wrong direction. You're burning energy on watching others, trying to please them, resisting the past, replaying hundreds of moments you have no power to alter. Meanwhile, the one thing you actually do control yourself, you've left neglected. Like a house no one cleans. And then you wonder why your inner world feels so chaotic, so anxious, so messy. Stoicism never promised an easy life, but it revealed something most people have forgotten. Everything you need, you already have within, and your only job is to strengthen it every single day. Not in theory, not in abstract belief, but in action. When you stop trying to control others and start focusing on what you can change, your attitude, your thinking, your reactions, how you move through adversity, that's when you reclaim your true power. Not the kind used to manipulate others, but the kind that makes you untouchable. They criticize you, you sharpen your skills until they can't ignore you. They leave you, you don't beg, you reflect, you improve, you become someone you yourself respect. Life feels unfair? You don't scream at the sky, you make a plan, take action, move forward. Because when you focus on what you can control, your life begins to move. Quietly, undramatically, but step by step you feel yourself getting stronger. Because now you're investing in the only thing that pays real dividends, your inner power. And that's the Stoic way. Self-mastery, self-reliance, self-respect. You don't wait for luck, you don't beg for help, you act, you forge your will. You lay the foundation of your life with discipline, with intentional choices. You're no longer anchored to the world, you stand apart, yet never disconnected. You act from the root, not in reaction to surface noise. This isn't some lofty philosophy. This is the work of a grown man. Every day you have two choices: surrender to other people's emotions or master your own. Whichever path you choose, your life will follow that direction. And if you've got the guts to choose the second path, then the next part is where you begin forging your mind into steel, not through belief, but through practice. Visualization, preparation, mental rehearsal, like a warrior. Because the man who's ready before the battle ever starts is the one who never loses. Most people quit before they ever learn the biggest lesson. But if you're still watching, I know you're different. Hit subscribe, like, and let's go all the way together. No, negative visualization isn't negative thinking. It's not, I'm sure I'll fail, or they'll probably leave me. It's not pessimism. It's training. It's preparation. It's how you forge your mind so it doesn't shatter when life throws its first punch. You think you're strong until something hits, a betrayal, a firing, an accident, an insult that cuts deeper than usual. And then you collapse, not because the event was unbearable, but because you were never ready for it. You lived in expectation. You believed everything would work out. You thought if you were good, people would treat you well. And then it hurt because life didn't return what you gave. That's the biggest trap. Living in expectation instead of preparing for reality. And when expectation and reality don't match, you break, you rage, you feel betrayed. But who betrayed you? Not the world. You did. Because you refused to imagine things might go wrong. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, preparing for the worst. Not to live in fear, but to train your response. A skilled soldier doesn't wait for battle to learn how to swing a sword. He trains daily. Likewise, you don't wait for the insult to learn how to stay calm. You don't wait for loss to learn how to face it. You train your mind every day by placing yourself in the worst-case scenario and asking, if this happens, how will I respond? You don't have to live like everything's awful. You just have to accept that it could be and be ready for it. No panic, no avoidance, no paralysis from surprise. Those who don't practice negative visualization are always shocked, and when shocked, they lose control. The Stoic does the opposite. He sees everything that could go wrong, and when it does, he simply says, I was expecting this. You might call it pessimism. They call it preparation. I call it the quietest form of power you can build, a mind that doesn't fold under real life. And if you've never practiced this, the next part will give you a living example. How Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful emperor of his time, used negative visualization each morning as a weapon to stay calm in the chaos of an empire. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he never let himself forget. He was still just a man, living in a world full of petty, selfish, foolish people. And he began every day with a brutally honest reminder. Today I will meet people who are foolish, deceitful, ungrateful, arrogant, jealous, and selfish. Not to mock, not to judge, but to prepare. To avoid surprise, to avoid offense, to avoid reacting like a weak man. Because he knew a truth most of us don't dare admit. Every day has the potential to be difficult, and people aren't always good. If you wake up expecting kindness, politeness, fairness, you're stepping into a battlefield with no armor. You'll take injustice as an insult. Disrespectful words will feel like a personal attack. Someone's rudeness will feel like a slap to your worth. But what if you saw it coming? What if you told yourself every morning, someone might cut me off in traffic, my boss might unfairly blame me, a loved one might hurt me without apology, and I won't let it control me. Then what? Then you start your day like a warrior. No illusions, no dependency on others' attitudes to stay calm. You walk into life already prepared. Others can get their hands dirty, but I'll keep mine clean. Negative visualization isn't living with a people suck mindset. It's accepting that bad things can happen, and I will not let them break me. The more you train that, the less pain you'll carry. Not because you're numb, but because you're strong. Marcus wasn't arrogant. He was the most powerful man alive, yet reminded himself each morning, don't expect life to be easy. Expect yourself to be strong enough to handle the hard. That's not philosophy, that's mental discipline. It's a spiritual weapon. It's armor for a soul that refuses to be controlled by anyone. And if an emperor needed that every single day, then you and I, mere mortals, have no excuse to surrender to the illusion that everything will be fine. You don't need to change your whole life in a day. You just need 30 seconds each morning. No phone, no scrolling, no coffee. Just sit or stand and face a single truth. Today might not be easy. This is the Stoics exercise. No fluff, no mysticism, no prayers. Just a brief moment to rip your mind out of its cozy dreams and throw it into reality. What could go wrong today? And how will I respond if it does? You imagine, the person you love might turn cold. The work you spent all week on might get ignored by your boss. A stranger might insult you just to feed their ego. Your body might ache, fatigue you, or bring bad news from a doctor. Life might give you no warning at all. You're not hoping for these things, but you let your mind touch that possibility. Because when you do, you're sending a signal to your nervous system. We knew this could happen, and we're ready. Sounds small, but the impact is foundational. Most of the anger and chaos you carry through your day doesn't come from the situation itself. It comes from surprise. It comes from that inner protest. Why is this happening to me? But the Stoic doesn't ask that. He asks, if this happens, will I still behave like the man I want to become? That's why these 30 seconds alone set you apart. Most people wake up and hope life goes easy. You wake up and forge a mind hard as steel, not led by emotion. Not defined by circumstance. You can't control the flow of life, but you can prime your mind before it gets swept away. And this morning, drill simple as washing your face becomes your first line of defense. Because when disaster actually hits, you don't scream, why me? You just breathe and whisper, I saw this coming. And at the end of this practice, here's where it leads. The unshakable state, where insult, chaos, or loss can no longer bend your will. Because your mind now has been tempered. Nothing can break you deeply if you've already faced it in your mind. Nothing can shock you into collapse if your thoughts have walked through it 100 times already. That's the quiet strength of negative visualization. Not to avoid life, but to prepare. Not to live in fear, but to eliminate surprise, the quickest way humans lose control. You see an argument forming. You stay calm because you've already pictured it. You get insulted. You don't flinch because you thought about that this morning. You're rejected, you don't crumble because you accepted that risk before you took action. You fail, you're not defined by it because you wrote out the worst-case scenario days ago. And by now you realize, when you stop fearing the worst, it loses its grip on you. Fear only has power when you pretend it doesn't exist. When you lie to yourself with, I'm sure it'll be fine. But the Stoic doesn't dream of ease. He doesn't teach you to be negative. He teaches you to build a fence before the thieves arrive. He teaches you to sharpen your blade before the war begins. He teaches you to anchor your soul before life punches you in the chest. Then, you walk out the door without flinching. You're not faking calm. You are calm, because you've sat with the worst and you're still standing. That is peace no one can buy, borrow, or fake. It's the reward for those with the guts to stare down their fears and not look away. And at this point, you'll understand why truly strong people don't shout, don't threaten, don't seek validation. They're just silent, observant, precise in action, unshaken. Because the real battle? It happened long ago, quietly, in the dark, in the early mornings when they chose to look at the worst, instead of pretending it didn't exist. And if that's the kind of man you want to become, then the next part is the final counterstrike. Not reacting with rage, but with cold indifference, stripping power away from anyone who dares to provoke you. Not everyone has the patience to watch until the end, but those who do are always the ones who go further than the rest. If you're one of them, subscribe and like. We're on the same team. You want to strike back, clap back, curse them out, make them regret messing with you? That's instinct. That's reaction. That's ego on fire. But striking back with words doesn't make you stronger. It only makes you the same as the one who attacked you. And you lose. You lose your calm. You lose your identity. You lose control. The Stoics don't respond that way. They don't get bitter. They don't shout. They don't need to teach someone a lesson. They respond with the coldest, sharpest, most effective weapon: indifference. Because indifference isn't avoidance. It's choosing not to play the garbage game someone else is trying to bait you into. When someone insults you, what they really want isn't to speak truth, it's to rob you of your calm. They need your reaction. They feed on the ability to throw you off balance. They want to see you explode, rage, lash out, because that's how they know they've touched the fragile core inside you. But what if you don't react? What if you just look at them in silence? What if you say nothing? What if you smile and walk away without carrying a single ounce of anger with you? What are they left with then? They're left alone with the fire they tried to burn you with. They burn in it themselves. You don't need to explain. Don't need to make it clear. Don't need to win the argument. Your indifference is the clearest proof that their words carry no weight. You don't have to say, "I don't care." You show you don't care by not giving a second of your energy to it. That is real power. Power that doesn't scream, power that doesn't argue. Power that says, "I control my response, and you don't get to steal that from me." The Stoics don't fight fire with fire. They take away the oxygen. They let the rage burn itself out, because they understand in any confrontation, the one who needs your reaction to feel powerful is the weak one. And you are not weak. Not if you have the courage to stay silent at the right moment. Not if you have the clarity to be indifferent to garbage. Not because you can't fight back, but because it's not worth your time. Ever notice something? The person who insults you, they don't walk away after throwing a jab. They pause, they watch, they wait. They want to see you flinch, snap, even just change your expression. That's all they need to know they've gotten to you. And in that moment, you've handed them what they wanted most. Power. Not real power. Cheap, temporary power that lasts a few seconds, but just enough to drag you down to their level. They're not stronger than you, not more noble than you. They're just better at pulling people into the mud where they already live. And they know one thing: if you react, you're already down there with them. Whether you're angry, hurt, or firing back, you've just confirmed that your emotions depend on them. That's why the Stoic doesn't react, not because he has nothing to say, but because saying anything would cost him. Reacting means playing an emotional game you have no business playing. Reacting is admitting, "You got to me." And that's the last thing you should ever reveal. People can only hurt you if you give them permission, and that permission exists as long as you care about what they think. As long as you need to be understood, need to be vindicated, still crave to win, some meaningless emotional fight. But when you go silent, when you don't fall into the reflex trap, when you hold that calm gaze and walk away without turning back, you drain every ounce of power they had. They're left with nothing. Nothing to fuel their fire. Nothing to hold on to. They fall into the void they tried to drag you into, and now they're the only ones still in it. Silence isn't weakness. Calm isn't running. It's a strike with no weapon. When you don't react, you flip the whole game. You don't just protect yourself, you expose their helplessness clearer than any comeback ever could. And if you do it once, you'll understand what real power feels like. Not standing above someone, but refusing to let anyone pull you down. People will tell you indifference is cowardice, that you're afraid to confront, too weak to fight back. and lacking backbone. And if you're not clear-headed, you'll believe it. You'll get dragged back into their game where you're yelling, arguing, proving, just to show you're not weak. But here's the truth. Every time you feel the need to prove you're not weak, it means you already are. Because the truly strong don't need anyone to confirm it. Indifference is not bowing your head. Indifference is the cold declaration that you won't participate in a trash battle. It's not avoidance, it's discernment. And the man who doesn't know how to choose his battles will end up drained, fighting everything, including things not even worth touching. You think reacting shows strength, but really, you're just playing by someone else's rules. They want you to snap, they need you to fire back, because only then do they feel like they exist. And you, thinking you're fighting for justice, are actually being led like a puppet. The Stoic doesn't refuse to react because he's afraid. He refuses because he sees the game for what it is. He knows the more someone wants your reaction, the less they deserve it. You stay silent, not because you have nothing to say, but because they're not worthy of hearing your voice. You remain indifferent, not because you're swallowing pride, but because you have more important things to protect: your calm, your dignity, your standard of living. And that's the difference. The weak react by reflex, the strong react by strategy. The immature see indifference as loss. The seasoned know that timely indifference is the highest victory. You don't need to shout in anyone's face to prove your strength. You just walk away without looking back. They'll get the message, and if they don't, even better. Because you don't live for validation from people who don't even know what self-control means. The next section won't go easy on you either. Because this is the final flex. Mastering indifference is not a mood. It's a skill. A discipline of the inner world that you must train, stumble through, and repeat until it becomes second nature. And you'll learn to be silent not because you're weak, but because you don't need to win. You already have. You think indifference is natural? That one day you'll just wake up and suddenly be calm in the face of all attacks? No. Indifference is not instinct. It's the result of discipline. It's something you train like a muscle daily, situationally, every time you swallow the urge to lash out without ever swallowing your self-respect. If you wait until you're under attack to see if you can stay calm, you've already lost. Because when emotions rise and your mind hasn't been trained, you won't choose your response. Your emotions will choose it for you. Indifference is a second reflex built by mastering the first one. And what's the first human reflex? Retaliation, defensiveness, ego protection, fast, loud, reactive behavior. A man who's never sat quietly with himself has no chance of staying silent when provoked, because he's never actually seen what his own anger really looks like from the inside. He thinks suppressing it is enough. But suppression without understanding is just a bomb waiting to explode, and it always explodes in the wrong place, on the wrong person. Stoics don't train indifference by reading philosophy. They train through deliberate behavior. They put themselves in discomfort, and they practice standing still. They repeatedly observe their emotions without acting on them. They write down in journals the times they wanted to lash out and analyze why. Bit by bit, they dissect the rage, the ego, the craving for revenge until nothing remains but a silence forged in fire. You can't fake indifference. People can see when you're shaking, holding back, boiling inside, and then they know exactly where to poke. True indifference is when you're calm inside, not from suppression, but because you no longer see reaction as necessary. You understand the game, you know the cost, and you choose not to play. Want that power? There's only one path: practice. Every day when someone provokes you, step back, breathe. Recall the last time you reacted and what it cost you. Then choose. Not to bottle it up, but to not need to. Because when indifference is no longer effort, it's default. You're no longer easy prey for any emotional game. You've risen above. And the final part of this section will show you just how destructive that can be for those who once thrived on pulling your strings, when they realize they have no access to you anymore. Nothing confuses a provocateur more than their failure to piss you off. They toss a jab. You don't react. They escalate to something venomous. You're still unmoved. Now they start to feel off, then frustrated, then angry. They thought they were ready to teach you a lesson. But now, they don't even know how to play because you never joined the game. Your calm suffocates them. Not because you're arrogant, but because you didn't let them touch a single nerve. You don't break, you don't shake, you don't strike back. You just stand there, still as stone. And in that moment, they realize a truth they cannot handle. They have no power over you anymore. When you don't react, you don't just stay calm, you sever the emotional leash they were trying to yank. They can't find a soft spot to stab because you didn't show one. They can't manipulate you because you never gave them the remote. And they can't drag you into the mud because you never set foot in it to begin with. Your indifference is the perfect counterstrike. No yelling, no insults, no fists. It's quiet, but it stings. It leaves no physical bruise, but it leaves a deep scratch in their ego. Because they're forced to confront what they hate most, their powerlessness. Stoics understand this well. They don't aim to win arguments. They win by never letting others make them lose themselves. They don't fight fire with fire, they cut off the oxygen. They don't sabotage their enemies, they let their enemies self-destruct for lack of opposition. You don't have to humiliate anyone to win. You just need the strength not to give them a single inch of soil to plant their provocation. And once that becomes habit, you're not just strong, you're dangerous in the quietest way. No one can shake you. That's when you truly master your mind. And when your mind is no longer someone else's playground, you are free. Not on paper, but in real time, in every situation, in every stare, in every word you choose not to say. And that is the moment they start suffocating. Not because you choked them, but because you didn't even breathe heavy. You can't just sit around praying to become stronger. You can't watch an inspirational video and think that starting tomorrow, you'll suddenly stay calm through anything. That's the sweetest illusion and the most common scam of our time, the belief that inner strength comes from inspiration. No, it doesn't come from inspiration. It comes from repetition, from monotony, from the boring, mundane things others dismiss, but you still do, every single day. Willpower isn't a surge of emotion when you're spiritually high. It's the choice repeated when there's zero motivation left. Anyone can stay calm when everything's smooth. Anyone can look solid standing on a stage, getting applause, getting praise. But who are you when no one's watching? When you're tired? When you've just been insulted, rejected, dismissed, abandoned? It's in those moments that true willpower is revealed. And to build it, there are no shortcuts, only training. Not once, not when you feel like it, but every day. Repeat, whether you want to or not. Willpower is built like a habit, not of steel, but of consistency. You don't need to be strong right away. You just need to show up every day and not quit. You find yourself easily affected by others' words? Good. Sit down each morning and meditate for 5 minutes. On day 1, your mind will scream. Pointless, waste of time, not working. Ignore it, keep going. On day 10, start journaling. Nothing life-changing happens. But you write anyway. And then one day, someone throws a sharp insult and you realize you didn't react like before. Not because you've reached enlightenment, but because your mind has slowly been trained not to follow impulse. The one who doesn't train daily is ruled by reflex. The one who trains daily gains the power to choose his response, and that is real freedom. No one can take that away from you, so don't wait for inspiration. Don't wait for the day you feel ready. That day doesn't exist. There is only today. Will you start or not? What you repeat each day becomes who you are. And if you don't consciously choose the right habit to repeat, life will choose a worse one for you, and you'll spend your entire life chasing emotion instead of mastering it. You think meditation is something distant, requires silence, incense, perfect posture? Wrong. To a Stoic, meditation is a ritual, it's a weapon. A tool to keep you from going insane in an insane world. It's how you see the chaos within you but refuse to be swallowed by it. Meditation is when you sit with no screen, no music, no distraction from the outside, and no escape from what's inside. You just sit and begin to observe. No fixing, no judging, no rationalizing. You observe like a guard watching a parade of emotions pass by: anger, fear, pain, the craving to be seen. They come. You see them, but you don't react. That's meditation. And the first time you try it, what do you feel? Discomfort, restlessness. Your mind will scream, "What are you doing? This is boring." Pick up your phone and watch something, and you'll realize one thing: you're not as in control of your mind as you thought. That's why you need to meditate, not to relax, but to start reclaiming control. Because if you can't sit still with yourself for 5 minutes, how do you expect to take an insult without lashing out? If you can't stop your mind from reaching for distraction, how will you stay calm when life throws something unexpected at you? Meditation is a simple but brutal exercise. It exposes the truth, how easily you're pulled, how little control you really have over your thoughts. And when you sit with that truth long enough without running, you start to regain something you lost long ago: inner silence. No one needs to know you're meditating. You don't need to sit like a guru. Just pick a corner, breathe, observe. Urges rising? Let them rise. You watch, no reaction. 1 minute, then 2, then 5. Next day, again. And then something strange happens. You stop losing control so easily. Not because life got easier, but because you became harder to move. Meditation is a silent war, not with anyone else, but with the shallow reflexes inside you. And if you can win that battle each morning, then the loud chaos of the outside world becomes nothing to fear. You think you know why you lose control? You think you get angry because they were out of line, because life was unfair, because someone crossed the line? Nope, that's just the story your emotions wrote in the moment. And if you don't write it down, dissect it, sit with it in silence, you'll keep living in a cycle of reaction, never realizing how you're being controlled. Journaling isn't for storytelling. It's not about logging your day. It's about facing the one question you never dared to ask in the heat of the moment: why did I react that way? The Stoics used journaling as a mirror, not to admire themselves, but to expose the ugly things they hid all day. They wrote down every time they lost control, not to shame themselves, but to find the real cause. No blame, no sugarcoating, no rewriting, just raw truth. I reacted because my ego got poked, not because they were wrong. I got angry because I expected too much, not because they owed me anything. I was hurt because I tied my worth to their validation, and they didn't give it. Journaling is the one place you don't have to pretend. The one space where you peel off all the masks you wear just to be accepted, to seem okay. And when you write, you start seeing yourself more clearly. You see the wounds that haven't healed, the unreasonable expectations, the things you thought were principles, but were really just fear of being disrespected in disguise. Writing won't heal you instantly, but it does the most important thing: it pulls you out of reaction mode and puts you back into thinking mode. And the moment you start thinking, you're no longer being steered by emotion. You become the one steering. You don't need to write well. No one's gonna read it. You just need to write honestly. Write right after the anger fades. Write when you feel hollow after an argument. Write when you catch yourself saying, "I don't even know why I reacted like that." That's the moment, not the peaceful ones, when you can finally dig deep and touch the root. And if you write long enough, you won't be the guy who reacts by default anymore. You'll become the guy who responds with intention. Because you've dissected yourself so thoroughly that you finally realize you always had a choice, you just never looked deep enough to see it. Night falls, no more voices, no more work, no more distractions. That's when the truth starts to rise. But can you face it? Or will you grab your phone, fire up a video, scroll through some pointless updates, just to avoid the one thing you know you need to do? Face yourself? Self-reflection isn't a ritual. It doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be poetic. It's just this: sit down, alone, and ask directly, what pulled me away from myself today? Don't recap the timeline. Talk about the emotions. Revisit the moments where you lost your composure. A look that got under your skin. A piece of feedback that made you defensive. A line you said just to cover your insecurity. The Stoics don't wait for life to blow up before they reflect. They dissect every single day, not to regret, but to calibrate. They don't shame themselves, but they also don't let themselves off the hook. They observe like skilled surgeons, sharp, honest, detached. That's what drives real growth. Nightly reflection is like cleaning a mirror. Skip it and dust will build. A little each day. But by the time you really need to see yourself, you'll be staring into fog. You'll think, "I'm doing okay," when in reality, you've drifted way off course, all because you stopped checking. It only takes 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes can change how you show up tomorrow. Because they make you look back, not just on what you did, but on how you reacted. And if you do this often enough, you'll start to notice patterns. You'll see the same types of situations showing up, the same old triggers you thought you'd outgrown, just asleep, waiting. Reflection shows you that growth isn't no more mistakes. It's fewer old mistakes and showing up to them differently. You don't need to be a philosopher to reflect. You just need to be honest. No excuses, no sugarcoating. Ask, did I act in line with my values today? If not, why not? If yes, what helped me hold the line? That's how Stoics train willpower. Not through theory, but through repeated action and daily audit. And if you do this consistently, you'll stop being the man dragged around by his emotions. You'll become the man who walks his chosen path, whether his emotions cooperate or not. Willpower doesn't show up on the good days, when you're rested, clear-headed, inspired. On those days, anyone can do the right thing. Real inner strength shows up when you don't feel like doing what's right, but you do it anyway. You're tired, but you write. You're irritated, but you don't snap. You're not in the mood, but you keep your word to yourself. That's willpower. Not a feeling, but a choice. Stoicism doesn't care how you feel. It only cares, what do you do when you feel like that? Feelings come and go. Actions are what get etched into who you are. And if you only live by your feelings, you'll spend your whole life like a leaf in the wind blown around by circumstances, emotions, and everyone else's agenda. Every time you choose discipline when your mind's screaming skip it, you're swinging another hammer at your steel core will. It won't shine right away, but it's being forged bit by bit. Just like lifting weights, you won't see your muscles grow after one workout. But if you keep showing up, no skipping, no excuses, your body transforms. And the same goes for your mind. Willpower doesn't show up when you feel ready. Willpower is born when you ignore the urge to quit and act like you're ready anyway. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait to feel better. Don't look for reasons. Reasons are just legal excuses. Anyone can justify their escape, but a man with willpower doesn't. He can be tired, beat up, wrong, but he won't bail on himself. Want to change? Don't start with a massive plan. Start with one small action you really don't want to do but know you must, and do it. Not once, every time. Do it until even you respect yourself. Do it until you don't need reminders, because you know, if I slack off today, I betray the man I'm trying to become. That's willpower, not some concept, but the result of short, silent, repeated moments where you say to your emotions, I hear you, but I'm not following you. And every time you do that, you take another step away from the weak version of yourself and closer to the man no one can shake anymore. Not because you're invincible, but because you chose what's right, even when you didn't feel like choosing at all. Now I've got a challenge for you. It sounds simple, but if you take it seriously, it'll change how you live, how you react, and how you see yourself. For the next 7 days, yes, just 7, I want you to do one thing. Whenever someone tries to provoke you, insult you, or push you into a reaction, you don't react. No words, no faces, no energy. Just silence and composure. No need to make it dramatic. You don't have to take the high road. You don't have to teach anyone a lesson. Just hold your gaze, keep your voice steady, slow your breath, and walk away. Picture yourself as stone in the waves, not swept away, not worn down. No need to speak to prove you're right. Just hold the reins. Because every time you're provoked, you face a fork in the road. 1, react instinctively and hand over your power. 2, hold that power and reclaim sovereignty over your mind. Most men fail here, not because they're weak, but because they've never trained inner discipline deep enough to choose silence when the ego is screaming for payback. But if you pull this off, not once, but for all 7 days, you'll witness something strange. You'll see others get confused. You'll watch them stumble when you refuse to play the game they set up. More importantly, you'll feel, maybe for the first time, what real power feels like. Not the power to dominate others, but the power to never be dominated by anyone. That's freedom. Not the kind people chant about on the streets, but the kind that lives deep inside. I own myself and no one gets to pull me out of that. So can you do it? 7 days, no reaction, no anger, no defense, just calm, observation, and silence like a man who knows everything that matters begins with not losing yourself to things that don't. Thank you for being here. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, turn on notifications, and like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment so we can spread positivity together.